Hello. Welcome to the fourth session of the Caregiver Thrive, Learn, and Connect workshop. Today, we're going to be talking about self-care. So let's go ahead and get started. To begin our workshop today, we're going to take a few moments out and go ahead and do a series of deep breathing. We're going to take 10 deep breaths together. So let's go ahead and do that. Sit comfortably in your chair and close your eyes. Your feet should be flat on the floor and your arms should be supported in a comfortable manner. Try to sit so that your shoulders are over your hips, as this opens up your area that supports your lungs so that you can take a deep breath. If closing your eyes is difficult for you, you can pick a place at the wall and just stare at it during this exercise. So go ahead and notice your breathing. Just observe your own breath for a couple of breaths. Now we are going to ask you to slow down your breathing to help you relax. To slow down, do a slow inhale through the nose for a silent count of 5. Then we'll pause for a moment and do a slow exhale through the mouth for the same count. Are you ready? Let's begin. Breathe in, 2, 3, 4, 5. Pause. Breathe out, 2, 3, 4, 5. Pause. Breathe in, 2, 3, 4, 5. Pause. Breathe out, 2, 3, 4, 5. Pause. Breathe in, 2, 3, 4, 5. Breathe out, 2, 3, 4, 5. Breathe in, 2, 3, 4, 5. Breathe out, 2, 3, 4, 5. Breathe in, 2, 3, 4, 5. Breathe out, 2, 3, 4, 5. Breathe in, 2, 3, 4, 5. Breathe out, 2, 3, 4, 5. Breathe in. Breathe out. Breathe in. Breathe out. Breathe in. Breathe out. When you're ready, open your eyes, come back to the room. Now that everyone is ready, let's check in and see how your action plans went from last week. So last week, you chose either to do the 3 paths, which was writing in something that was a kind act that you did for someone else, a positive experience that you had, or gratitude. Or you chose to work on your Atlas Care Map, taking it from the draft status to something that is a little bit more reflective of what you're working with and sharing it with somebody that's on your care map now. So has anyone done that? Is anyone journaling or did anyone work on your care map? So, if you're doing the journaling or the three paths, did you note if it was getting easier towards the end of the week to actually find things in all three characters or all three categories? Are you starting to pay attention more during the path of your day to note these things that are happening in your life? At the end of the week, last night, maybe this morning, did you have an opportunity to look at everything that's on your list? Maybe taking a moment, being amazed at how many positive activities or how many positive things have happened to you over the past week. Um, did you maybe see an event on there or see something that happened and it clicked for a moment and you were able to remember it in its entirety? What did you notice as far as just your sense of well-being? These are all questions to think about as you continue to work on your three paths, remembering that you're supposed to be working on it for 3 weeks or 21 days. For those of you that chose to delve more deeply into your Atlas Care Map, were you able to finish it? Did you do the reflection? What did you notice or learn from it? Is there something that was missing in your map? Something that you've decided to really work on and kind of fill a gap? What's your next step? How are you going to use your care map to make your experience as a caregiver a little bit easier or a little bit more enjoyable? I recommend that you have your care map handy as we continue to go through the workshop so that if there's something that happens or it springs a memory, you can make a small note, go back and make adjustments as new thoughts occur. So today's topic is all about self-care. We're going to start by exploring burnout and why this is an issue. Then we'll talk about self-care with a focus on different tips and strategies that you can use to help you get some self-care into your life. But first, we're going to start with the elephant in the room. We know that things that are listed on the screen are real concerns. The lack of time, lack of energy, motivation. The fact that many times self-care can be expensive. I mean, if you're going to go and do a whole day at the spa, that can be quite a lot of money. Sometimes you just don't have the help, right? If you're not there at home, who's there taking your place? We know these are all real concerns. A job of caring for another person day in and day out can be overwhelming. It can seem impossible to fit one more thing into your already busy schedule, but it's important to find small, doable ways to keeping yourself healthy. Ask yourself, what will happen to the person that you're caring for if you burn out from all the stress of caregiving? You're here today because either you noted you needed help or someone you know recommended that you attend. Try to keep an open mind to the suggestions offered here and focus on the small, doable things that you can do. Sometimes it doesn't matter how much you do, just that you're doing something for you. Caregiving is a balancing act between the ups and the downs. On one side, you have the positives. Caregiving is an opportunity for you to give back to someone who cared for you, someone who cares for you. It could be a spouse, a parent, or a dear friend who you love. Many find it very rewarding. But on the other side, the need for continuous care with, at times, inadequate resources can be a source of constant worry and stress. Because of these stressors and others like them, caregivers are at an increased risk for burnout. you know caregiving is intense, and there are multiple reasons why that happens. There's a heavy workload. Most chronic illnesses are progressive, meaning they get worse over time, increasing in intensity as the disease progresses. There may be conflicting demands. For many of us, there are not enough hours in the day to get everything done for everybody. Balancing the needs of the person that you're caring for, and coworkers, employers, family members, even your own needs. There are many demands on our caregivers today. There can be a lack of privacy as well. When you're on demand 24/7, means there's little time to be alone and take care of some of these self-care issues. There can be a change of roles, which can add to the intensity of the experience. Caregivers move from child or spouse to caregiver, changing how they relate to the person. And at the same time, they may be grieving for that lost relationship. There can be unreasonable demands placed on you as a caregiver. That can be from other family members who don't understand the complexity of the role. It can be from the person being cared for, who will only let you be the person who provides care. You yourself can hold unrealistic expectations, making caregiving more intense. You think about, the things that you're doing, you may expect that these efforts will have much more effect than they maybe have. Especially if the person that you're caring for has a progressive disease, such as Parkinson's or Alzheimer's. Many times we can't cure the disease itself, and it may feel futile, some of the caregiving things that we do. When we talk about caregiver burnout, what are we actually talking about? Well, there are certain signs that you can look for. Things like uncharacteristic irritability or impatience, especially if it comes on kind of sudden. Burnout affects sleep, right? So you're not getting a lot of sleep, or perhaps you're not getting good quality sleep when you do sleep. You may note a sense of forgetfulness, right? Things that you normally would remember, for some reason you can't seem to just hold it in your head. Some people experience physical symptoms. They may experience an increase in headaches or gastrointestinal distress. We can see either a decreased appetite, you just don't feel like eating. Maybe even paired with an increased food intake. Just because you don't feel like eating doesn't mean you're not constantly snacking during the day. Some people try and cope by increasing their alcohol intake, or they increase drug usage. Many times caregivers, one sign of caregiving burnout is the fact they start isolating. They stop reaching out to friends. They stop going to support group meetings. They're feeling so overwhelmed that they just pull back from everything. You may note a lack of interest in doing things that you used to enjoy. Nothing seems to bring that sense of relief anymore. You may note yourself getting sick all the time, right? A lot more colds, allergy hits you harder. Those kinds of things start to happen. You may feel anxious or depressed all the time. And in its extreme, you may have thoughts of hurting yourself or even the person that you're caring for. So you probably, if you've been caregiving for any length of time, have heard a lot about the issue of self-care. But really, what is self-care? Well, we know self-care lessens the effects of things that you normally would find overwhelming and stressing, like the signs of burnout that we just talked about on the last slide. We know that self-care is defined as a deliberate action that you take that improves your physical, mental, or emotional well-being. This doesn't mean that you're putting your needs over anyone else's. It simply means that you're relaxing and recovering in order to perform at the best of your ability when you are needed. Certain acts of self-care provide to you more energy than they take to do. Exercise is a great example of this. As you know, your energy is not infinite. Once it's gone, it takes time to refill. Proper nutrition, a good night's sleep, exercising your mind or your body, all provide you with a boost to your energy levels. In essence, filling the well with more energy when it takes to do these things. Much like airline attendants who encourage you to put your own mask on first. Taking care of you first means you're going to have the energy to take care of everyone else that you're responsible for. Self-care comes in many different forms. So let's take a deeper look at that next. Many caregivers find there are several areas of self-care that they probably have been neglecting to some extent as they go through the caregiving journey. We have the physical area, the mental area, spiritual, and social. So in the physical area, we're talking in essence about caring for your body. As a caregiver, you may find yourself neglecting your own physical well-being. There's a tendency to push it off, thinking, I'll do it later. However, caregiving can take years, and neglecting your health over a long stretch of time is not beneficial for you and may in fact impact your ability to provide optimal care. Ask yourself, when was the last physical or the last dental checkup? How am I sleeping? Am I eating well? Or depending on takeout, fast food? Am I exercising? So different things that you can do to support your physical self-care are things like schedule a doctor's appointment, take a daily walk, trying chair yoga or yoga, perhaps eating more vegetables. All of these things are things that you can do to help improve your physical self-care. Another category that you may want to consider is your mental self-care, and this is really exercising your mind. Your brain is a muscle that needs to be exercised like any other muscle. If you're feeling fuzzy, finding it hard to think, and you've addressed the physical, so sleeping, eating, and exercising, then it's time to stretch your mind. Whether you're learning something new or challenging yourself, your brain develops new pathways, allowing it to adapt and change. Some of the things you can do under the mental category of self-care are things like listen to a podcast, do a puzzle, play a game, something that needs you to exercise new strategies. You can use your non-dominant hand for tasks, or you can draw a map of your neighborhood from memory. All of these things exercise your mind, and while you do them, actually can create new neural pathways in your brain, making your brain more adaptable and flexible. So another category of self-care is spiritual. And in this, we really need you to think broadly. It's any meaningful action that connects you to a greater good. Social self-care, spirituality is that broad concept with room for many different perspectives. In general, it includes a sense of connection to something bigger than ourselves, and typically involves a search for a meaning in life. Spirituality is a personal practice that is meaningful and kindles a sense of sacredness or belonging. It's really any practice that gives you that connection and reduces those feelings of isolation and loneliness. Some things that you can do within this category, you can say a prayer. Some people find meaning in spending time in nature, feeling connected to the greater world. Some people find meaning in helping someone else. You may find it through meditation. So there are a variety of ways that you can encourage self-care spiritually, from attending a worship service to a solitary practice. The last category we're going to talk about is social, and that's a method of reaching out to others. Social self-care is all about nurturing those relationships, whether it's spending quality time with friends, perhaps developing new connections in your network, or just reaching out and meeting new people. These people should uplift and support you. Social self-care also means letting go of those individuals who flood your life with self-doubt and negativity when you can. Facebook is a great example of this. Many times, as you're going through your feed, you'll note that there are certain people you almost dread reading their posts because you know it's going to upset you. If you look for the 3 dots in the upper right-hand corner, you can click on it and select Hide Post. That will mean that you'll see fewer posts like this. You can snooze the author for 30 days, meaning you won't see any of their posts for the next 30 days. They don't know that you've done this, so you don't have to worry about any challenges in the relationship because of it. Or you can simply unfollow them and you'll stop seeing their posts but still say friends. So there are different ways you can do. Self-care is protecting those social networks that support you and that give you pleasure or a sense of well-being in the connection. But it also means cutting out those that are negative and that bring you stress if you can. So one of the things we really like to talk about in this workshop, and that we have found affect many caregivers, is getting that quality sleep. 76% of caregivers report they don't get quality sleep. And that proportion is considerably higher if you are a female caregiver as compared to male caregivers. So for many of us, we have been burning the candle at both ends for a long time. As a result, our sleep quality has slowly declined. Poor sleep, however, affects us in many different ways. It becomes harder to focus and pay attention. It slows reaction time, making for dangerous driving and other safety-related risks. It affects your ability to solve problems effectively. Without good quality sleep, many people become more forgetful. We know that it affects mood. It leads to irritability. For some people, it places them at a higher risk for depression and increased anxiety. Chronic sleep deprivation increases the risk of high blood pressure, heart disease, obesity, and diabetes. So you can see how the quality of your sleep really does affect you in multiple different ways. We used to think that sleep was wasted time. However, research has shown us that sleep actually, our body does very important things while we sleep. We know that memories are reactivated and consolidated, making it easier to recall them later. We know that the connections between brain cells are strengthened and that information is transferred from short-term memory to long-term memory. Unfortunately, we know caregiving interrupts sleep in many different ways. So on one hand, we have that stress, the worry, and the anxiety that can help us, or that helps to delay falling asleep. Or on the other hand, it can help you to, or it makes you wake up early, right? So that you run like a hamster wheel, right? You run these scenarios through your brain over and over again, where you just feel that level of anxiety. We also know that the person that you're caring for actually may wake in the night and disturb your sleep because they need help. And we also know that for many caregivers who are experiencing some depressive symptoms, which we've talked about in previous sessions, that this also includes sleep disturbances in and of itself. So, a question that I would really like you to think about now is, how much sleep do you think you're getting? Do you think it's a quality sleep? Right? Have you tracked your sleep? There are many different ways now. If you have a smartphone, though, this watch, all of these things can help you to track your sleep. But so can pen and paper. You don't have to get it super complicated. Note the time you went to bed. Note the time, make a tick mark when you get up. Note the time you wake up in the morning. And then when you first wake up, how rested did you feel? Right? Did you get up ready to start your day? Or did you wake up hitting the snooze alarm for 10 more, just 10 more minutes? Right? I wake up tired already. That can give you a huge hint as to whether you're getting good quality sleep. One of the things I always like to talk about in a session like this is, how much sleep do you actually think you need? There is a persistent myth out there that exists that says, as we age, we don't need as much sleep as we used to. Well, the reality is as an older adult, if you're age 65 and older, you can see that, sure, compared to a newborn, you don't need as much sleep. But compared to what you were as an adult, it's almost the same amount of sleep, slightly less. If you notice, age 18, your recommended amount of sleep is 7 to 9 hours. The numbers only slightly decrease as we age. Sleep needs, however, are individual, right? We all heard about those people who not only survive, but they thrive on less than 5 hours a night. We like to celebrate them, right? You hear all about Steve Jobs, who ran Apple, who slept on only a few, who managed to survive on only a few hours sleep a night, along with many other of the people that we really respect. We hear about how they only need less than 5 hours sleep a night and they're up and ready to go the next day. The reality is that there are less than 5% of the population who can effectively function on that level of sleep. Most of us need that 7 to 8 hours. And even within that, they might need a little bit more. Most people are walking around sleep deprived. So how do you know if you're sleep deprived? Well, you may be experiencing any one of the following symptoms. Do you feel drowsy during the day? Are you routinely falling asleep like within 5 minutes of laying down in bed at night? So you're immediately out. Are you experiencing microsleeps? And these are very brief episodes of sleep while being awake, right? That moment when you close your eyes for a second and you wake up and it's a few moments later and you're like, oh, what just happened? Or you're sitting there and you find yourself not nodding to sleep. Those are microsleeps. Or better yet, and I see many, many adults do this, the moment you sit down in front of the TV, you're out like a light. So all of these can give you clues that you're not getting enough sleep at night. But how do you increase the amount of sleep that you're getting? We do that through sleep hygiene. So sleep hygiene just describes the things that you can do to make it easier to get the number of hours of sleep you need, as well as improving that quality of sleep. If you're already feeling fine when you wake up in the morning, you're getting enough hours of sleep, then you don't really need to do these things. But if you note any of the symptoms that we talked about on the last slide, the drowsy during the day, waking up exhausted, finding it that you fall asleep the instant your head hits the pillow, you may need to improve your sleep hygiene. So some of the suggestions: limit long naps. So you want to limit any napping to 30 minutes in the early afternoon, so before 2 o'clock. You want to stick to a schedule. What does that mean? It means you're getting up at the same time every day, 7 days a week. No weekend hours, right? What we know is that if you wake up at the same time every day, you adjust your schedule for that, you're much more likely to fall asleep at the same time later. And we'll explain why that happens in a moment. You want to get out into the sunlight. So your body clock is set through your optic nerve, and that is keyed to the sunlight. So if you want to get up early, you want to get up at the same time every morning, make sure you expose yourself to sun so that your clock gets a chance to adjust to, I am awake during the day, I am asleep at night. The way it tells it is by the light it sees. So get out into the sunlight and play some. You want to get moving. Regular physical activity promotes good sleep. We know this through years of research. Restrict what you eat and drink. So what do we mean by that? Avoid caffeine after lunch, and don't eat or drink for 3 hours before bed. Now again, there's always somebody in every one of these workshops that say, oh, I drink coffee all day and I don't have a problem. And all I can say is good for you. I am happy to hear that. This is not this is not one of the concerns you need to address. However, if you are having problems sleeping or getting good quality sleep, try it out for a little while and see if it helps. I kept banish electronics on this screen. Originally, there was thought to be some issue with the blue light mimicking sunlight. So if you had the electronics going at night, you were actually messing with your body's clock that says it's time to sleep. Newest research shows that this may not be true, but I will tell you what is true. If you are laying in bed and you're getting notifications every few moments where it goes bing, bing, it is human nature to reach out and see what it is. And every time you interrupt that, it's like you're restarting, getting your body and mind prepared for sleep. So if you can, take those distractions out of your bedroom. If you cannot remove them, put them on silent, flip them over so you don't see the smartphone screen light up. Limit the amount of disturbances that can happen because of electronics. Try a warm bath or wear warm socks. So a regular bath can be beneficial 2 to 3 hours before bedtime. It can help your body start to relax. Surprisingly enough, cold feet can actually delay the start of you falling asleep. So if you can find a way, wear warm socks. Some people take a heating pad and turn it on low and then remove it before they fall asleep, so you can snuggle your feet in that nice warm spot on the bed. Some will put an extra blanket over the feet portion of your bed. There are multiple different ways of warming your feet, but that can make it a little easier for you to fall asleep. Not surprisingly, we discourage those difficult discussions or arguments right before bed. They're very activating, right? You have a difficult discussion just before bed. Your partner may fall asleep without any issue, but you're laying in bed looking at the ceiling going, oh, I should have said this, or I didn't say this right, or I can't believe he's mad at me about this. So you jump on the hamster wheel and your brain's going round and round and round, it's not getting ready for sleep. I'm going to offer you one more thing that's not on this list. For those of you who are parents, if you remember, one of the most successful things that you probably did with your kid is you put them on a schedule, right? You started them getting ready for bed, maybe tied to dinner, may have been tied to a TV show, whatever. But let's just tie it. If you tie your sleep schedule to something that starts at the same time every night, maybe it's the nightly news. 10 o'clock comes, news starts, you finish the news, you go get your pajamas on, you brush your teeth, you may take a shower, whatever it is that you do, set yourself up a schedule. You do it the same for 3 to 4 weeks. What you're doing is you are telling your mind and your body that at this time we start getting ready for bed. So that means as soon as the news comes on, your mind is like, oh, we're getting ready for bed now. And whether your bedtime is right after the news or your bedtime is an hour or two after the news, you've started a pattern that sets your mind getting ready with the thought of bedtime in that time period. It can be incredibly helpful to set a schedule like that so that you're literally preparing your mind and your body for sleep. So when you start to try and change to these better sleep habits, my recommendation is you try these things for 3 to 4 weeks. If you see no improvement, then it's good to reach out to a mental health provider who specializes in sleep who can help you. Now, granted, there are medications that you can take that put you to sleep, medications that you can take to wake you up. You may get hours of sleep, but you don't always get the good quality sleep. My recommendation is at first, before you go directly to the medication, you try to improve your sleep hygiene. If that doesn't work, you work with a mental health provider who specializes in sleep to combat any signs of insomnia you may have. And then once those things are taken care of, if you're still struggling with sleep, then you can talk to your primary care physician about medication. Now, one of the pushbacks I always receive when I talk about this is, why no naps? Man, I get great results from naps. This is why the recommendation is that you limit naps. You have something called a sleep drive, much like your appetite, which directs you to be hungry and modifies that sense of being hungry. Your sleep drive modifies your sense of wanting to sleep. Not unexpectedly, it is lowest in the morning after you wake up. You just had a whole bunch of sleep. And then it slowly increases during the day. And then in the evening at bedtime, it helps you to fall asleep. Naps weaken that sleep drive and make it harder to fall asleep. Much like when your parents told you that you shouldn't eat before you have dinner, you shouldn't snack before dinner because you're not going to be hungry for dinner. If you nap in late afternoon and evening, then it's going to be harder to fall asleep when it's time to go to bed. And this includes the person that you're caring for too, right? So if they're falling asleep in the evening in front of the TV, that means that they're going to be up and probably disturbing your sleep during the night. Another thing I like to talk about and really highlight are the benefits of staying active. We've talked about this multiple times in multiple sessions because exercise can really help you to address a lot of different issues. So it helps you to take care of yourself physically, mentally, and emotionally. Even though it may sometimes be very hard to find the time, just 30 minutes of physical activity during the day can help you maintain a healthy weight, to help reduce stress, and to improve your overall health and well-being. Exercising regularly has many positive health benefits, including stress reduction, better quality sleep, overall improved mood, better weight management, increased energy levels. Research has shown that can help improve memory. That if it's done consistently, it can either prevent or delay the onset of things like heart disease, stroke, as well as other disease prevention, such as reduction in blood pressure and increased metabolism. So really the goal that you're looking for is 150 minutes per week of moderate intensity aerobic exercise. What are we talking about? 30 minutes a day for 5 out of 7 days. Remember, when we're talking about moderate intensity, you should be able to talk but not sing during the activity. So many of us struggle with many barriers to staying active, right? Number one, how do you find the time? Well, it's important to note that you can combine staying active with a task that you already do during your day, right? If you are going grocery shopping, parking a little farther out and walking in, right? If you have an opportunity to take stairs instead of an elevator or an escalator, those increase that ability to stay active. If 30 minutes time frame is a little bit too long, break it into 3 10-minute segments, right? If you're at work, take a break, walk around the block. You're going to take 15 minutes anyways. It's probably better to stay out of the kitchen where someone just brought in donuts or cupcakes or something like that. It'll help you to think better as you go through your workday. It's important to note that this is one of the few medical things out there that if you can't do all 150 minutes in a week, that some activity is better than none. For many of our things that we do, you have to get at least this amount of to be able to get the benefit, right? However, staying active is not one of them. The research has shown us that even if you do just a little bit, you're going to see some benefit from it. To get the optimal benefits, you need to do 150 minutes a week. But if you can't do that, start out slower, do just a little bit more activity. Now, a lot of times we get out there and we make a plan, right? Oh, this sounds great. I'm going to really do this. I'm going to go out and I'm going to focus and I'm going to get ready to run a marathon, right? But we do it for a couple days and then we're like, life interferes and that's it. Well, there's a couple things you can do. One is you can mix it up, right? Exercise comes in many different categories. There's the aerobic exercise, there's flexibility exercises, there's strength bearing exercises. Mix it up a little bit so you do a little bit from each category. Another thing that you can do is find a buddy. A lot of times we'll do things for other people that we won't do for ourselves, right? You're like, oh, I know I said I was going to do that walk. I just don't want to do it. And then your friend comes and knocks on the door and they're like, okay, let's go. And you're like, fine. Puts on your shoes, you go for your walk because you'll do it to go out with them rather than just do it to exercise. If you're too tired to exercise, right? Many of us, when we're faced with a day, day-long activity like caregiving, it just goes into the night. You're just looking at it, you're like, look, I'll just do it tomorrow. I can't today. I'm just too tired. It's important to remind yourself that by exercising, you'll actually feel more energized. Sometimes you just have to make the plan and just do it for a few weeks to start to see these benefits. If you're continuing to feel this fatigue after a few weeks, you really should check in with your doctor. There may be an underlying medical cause for it. And just ruling that out can go a long way to making you feel a little bit more confident. An important thing to do is to make it a priority, right? This is one of the best things that you can do for your overall health, physically, psychologically, and cognitively. So, you know, if there was one activity that you could do that could address so many different things, wouldn't you want to do it? So rather than doing a whole bunch of different things, maybe putting exercise or staying active into that must-do category might be helpful to getting you to overcome that barrier of just, I don't have time, I just don't feel like doing it. One thing I'll highly recommend is that you make it easy for yourself. Do things first thing in the morning before you get busy, right? If you're going to join a gym, even if that one that's a little further out is so much more cooler, get the one that's close to the house, right? By making it easier for yourself, you're going to be much more likely to do it. And finally, make it fun, right? There are many different ways of staying active. If you make it a chore, the likelihood is you're not going to stick with it. But if you make it fun, make it part of making friends, right? Go to a Zumba class. They have golden Zumba, they have Zumbas. Music is bright, it's peppy, you get to dance. It can make you feel better overall. Maybe it is as simple as dancing in your kitchen by turning the radio on and making the music a little bit happier and making it easier to move. Finding a way to do something that you enjoy that is active, working laughter into it, right? Working friends into it. These are the things that are going to keep you coming back and making it a lifestyle change rather than a chore that you have to do for a certain amount of time. Finally, if you haven't exercised in a while or you have underlying medical conditions like diabetes or some movement issues, maybe chronic arthritis in your hip or in your feet, it's important that you check with your doctor. Not so much to know if you can stay active, but what they may have for you are modifications that you can make. Many people who think that they can't exercise or they can't stay active find out after talking to their doctor, maybe getting a referral to a physical therapist, find ways to modify and exercise so that they can continue to stay active. One of the things in your packet is a self-care checklist. And you can use this in one or one of two ways, right? The first is an easy checklist. Oh, I want to start adding vegetables to my diet. So I'm going to make a note. And when I add vegetables to my diet, I can check it off. Or perhaps you really want to start doing more puzzles. So you add that to exercise your mind. That's one way of doing it, is just making it a to-do list. But another way of working with this, right? If you're new to thinking about self-care, if this is not something that's been part of your life, you may be doing some level of self-care and just be unaware of it. This is a good way to make a note every time you do something that can be considered taking care of you, whether it's physically, whether it's cognitively, whether it's spiritually or socially. All of these things you can make a note. And over time, track it for a week, and you may notice that, hey, I'm doing pretty good at nurturing meaning. I mean, I go to my worship service on the weekend. I help out a neighbor. I do a lot of things that is really covered well. And reaching out, I have a ton of friends. And I keep in contact with them. I'm really good. But I really need to start doing stuff for me, either physically or mentally. So I make a note. You can see over time where the holes are in your self-care. Then you can then focus on that. So this is a way of either using it as a checklist or perhaps noting things that you may need to, where your gaps are in your self-care. depending on where you are in the process of integrating self-care into your life. So you can use it in either way. Now, you may start this process with all the good intentions in the world, right? I hear what you're saying. I know I need to do self-care. I have a plan. I'm going to do, these 3 or 4 activities. And it just seems like what I thought was a priority never happens. Then it's important to figure out what's actually stopping you from doing this. First thing is really identifying what your attitude or your belief is about self-care, right? So many times these attitudes and beliefs that we hold can stand in the way of caring for yourself. Whether or not this is a lifelong pattern, or that maybe you just find taking care of someone else is an easier option. There are 2 things that you can do to help understanding what's stopping you. If you identify these attitudes or beliefs, then you can then note when they're happening and you have counters for them, right? So do you think you're being selfish if you put your needs first? That's something to think about. Many of us are raised with the idea that you reach out and you help others, or perhaps you're in the back of your mind thinking, well, my mom sacrificed so much for me when I was growing up. Now it's my turn to take care of her. Right? And anytime I'm not taking care of her, I kind of feel guilty because I should be taking care of her. Right? For some people, they just may not feel like they're doing their job if they're asking other people for help. Right? If I'm going to go to an exercise class and I need to have someone come in and sit with my husband or my wife, I may feel like I'm not doing my job if I have to have someone else come in and help them. That I'm the caregiver, that's my position, that's what I should be doing. So by identifying these attitudes or beliefs, a lot gives you that space to be able to say, no, wait a minute. I'm not being selfish when I take care of myself. Because if I don't take care of myself, then I can't take care of them. Right? Or, asking for help, no one expects anyone to do 24/7, 7 days a week. Right? We use a caregiving team to take care of the person that we're caring for. I may be in charge of that caregiving team, but calling somebody in shouldn't make me feel guilty or inadequate that I'm not doing my job. So, but first, before you can address these issues, you need to identify them. Another thing is negative self-talk. And negative self-talk is just the negative stuff we tell ourselves. I mentioned this before, but many times we are meaner to ourselves than we would ever be to someone else. Can you imagine telling your best friend some of the things that we routinely tell ourselves? Stuff like, I'm so stupid, why didn't I think of that? Or, you're just lazy. If you get up off your bottom and you just exercise, you'd be thin. We tell ourselves very mean things, right? So let's take a look at what that really looks like. Right? So Sally's been trying to become more active by adding an evening walk, but it rarely seems to happen. She decides to walk after dinner, but as she's getting ready, she looks in the mirror and she thinks to herself, oh my God, I look horrible. There's no way I'm going to go out. Right? Or maybe the person that she's caring for says, oh my God, you look so fat in those shorts. What do you think happens when we tell ourselves these things? Right? Do you think Sally went for that walk, or do you think she just threw her hands up and said, nope, ain't happening? You address your negative self-talk with this internal dialogue. What could she tell herself that would influence her decision into actually taking the walk? Right? So you can address the horrible, or you can address the not going out. Both could work. Right? It's going to depend on Sally. right? How can you address the horrible? You can think about things like, well, I'm just going to exercise. Everybody looks horrible when they exercise, right? Or why would me looking like I'm sweating be horrible? That's just part of everyday life. Or you could address the not going out, right? What could she tell herself that would encourage her to go out and take that walk, right? When she says, no, I'm just not going to go. Well, again, have a friend come, or you can just address the fact that, I know I'm defeating myself here. I have to go for this walk. It makes me feel better. So I'm just going to go. It doesn't matter. Let's take a look at another one, right? Anna decides to steal a few moments and enjoy catching up with her friends on Facebook. As she scrolls through her feed, she sees an ex-coworker has posted. She feels a sense of dread as she sees her name because every time her ex-coworker posts, she gets so upset with what she writes. Anna finds herself thinking, if I unfriend her, she's going to get mad at me. I'm such a coward. So what do you think happened when she said that? Do you think she went ahead and just read the feed, read the coworker's message anyways because it's part of her feed? Do you think this ended up being self-care because she was trying to connect with friends, right? She was trying to do that social self-care. Or do you think it actually added to her stress? Right, most likely added to her stress. So what could she do to remedy this? What could she tell herself to help her to act, to either snooze her for 30 days or unfollow her? What could she tell herself to make her do that? Right? Maybe remind herself that this coworker or ex-coworker isn't even going to see what she does, right? Or just tell herself, you know what? I deserve to go to Facebook and not be upset. This is supposed to be a good thing for me. So these kinds of things, what you tell yourself, what beliefs that you hold, what attitudes you have, all can stop you or support your efforts towards self-care. It's important for you to identify what's stopping you and change that into supporting you for self-care. Now, I have given you a lot of information about self-care, and at this point, you may be like, oh, look, I don't even know where to start. If you're at that position now, if you haven't thought about self-care in a long time, if it's not part of your day-to-day life, then here are 4 things that you can do right from the get-go. Number 1, address your health issues. If you haven't been to the doctor in a long time, it's a good time to make that appointment so that you can see what's going on and see if there are any things you should be doing to making it a little bit easier for you to go day to day. Find a support group. Doesn't have to be a formal one, although many people find some benefits to being part of a formal support group. But if that's not for you, that's okay. You can have an informal support group. Find that friend that you can rant to, right? And make sure that you spend a few moments with her. Find a group that you laugh with, right? Practice some self-compassion. Don't beat yourself up all the time, right? If it is something that's happened during you're out there, you're taking care, you're doing the best you can, something happens and you're like, oh my God, I am the worst caregiver ever. Well, you know what? You show up. At the baseline, you show up and you deserve a pat on the back for that. You do your best, you try, you make an effort. There are things that you do surprisingly well, right? Things that no one thought you would have a handle on, and you do it, you show up and you're successful at it. Pat yourself on the back for that. Remember to laugh. Laughter itself actually has a surprising amount of health benefits. There's some really interesting research out there that talks about fake laughter versus real laughter, and how if you don't find anything funny, if you practice fake laughing, eventually it turns into real laughing. And throughout the whole thing, you get a lot of really great health benefits and psychological well-being, right? It increases that level, just makes you feel better. So add some laughter to your life. Whether you're watching comedies, you're sharing jokes with friends, you're laughing and smiling at the pictures of puppies and kittens that come across our feed occasionally. All of these can help you to start to increase those small moments of self-care in your day. So here's the takeaway from this session. Caregivers are at increased risk for certain health concerns and for burnout. One way to address that is self-care. Self-care is a deliberate action that you take that improves your physical, mental, or emotional well-being. That it's important to understand what keeps you from doing self-care, and that understanding can help you to increase that amount of self-care that you do. It's important to prioritize addressing your health concerns, finding support, practicing self-compassion, and adding laughter. And these are a good start on adding self-care to your day. So at the end of each session, we make an action plan. Hopefully you have a pen and paper available, because a written plan is much more effective than one that we just kind of, an intention that we hold in our mind. So go ahead, write down which one of these you want to work on. Whether it's using the self-care checklist to identify the things that you currently are doing for self-care, or you know what areas you want to work on, and you're going to pick 3 of them, and you're going to practice 1 a day. So once you've picked one of these, go ahead and write that at the top of your form. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to have you set a deadline, because we know that setting a deadline gives a sense of urgency to the task that you're doing. We always prioritize that which has a deadline. It's also important, once you've written down that deadline, to stop and think, why did you pick the one that you picked? The more personal the motivation is, the more likely it is to motivate you to do it, right? If you write down that the reason I picked this is because I feel like I'm super close to burnout, I've noticed too many of those signs in my day-to-day life. I am like crazy irritable with everybody. And I snapped the head off of that poor clerk in the grocery store yesterday, right? That motivation is so much more likely to, or that, that is so much more motivating to be able to work on this, because it's a personal, intimate reason. Then, hey, I'm part of this workshop and I have to do one of these, so I might as well do this one, right? Next thing you're going to do, what research tells us, is that piggybacking a new task onto something you already do routinely and consistently is a great way to jumpstart something new. It becomes an automatic reminder for you to do it. So what are you going to pair it with? When are you going to sit down and make a note about these self-care issues? Right? In the morning when I do my coffee, I'm going to sit down and I'm going to review that self-care checklist, right? Or maybe I'm going to practice, I'm going to review the list and I'm going to pick one I'm going to do that day. And, I'm going to, by reviewing it with my coffee, it's going to remind me to do it. So it's kind of a combination of a reminder, and it's a combination of a it's a kind of a motivator at the same time. Now, occasionally, the task you may have all the great intentions in the world, but it seems like you just never get to it. One of the reasons why, it may be just it feels too large to attempt. And if that's the case, then you want to break it down into smaller steps. When you do that, you go back and you set a deadline for each step so that you remember to do them. And then following is these reminders. So you're going to pair it with something that's going to be a reminder, but sometimes you need additional reminders, whether it's using your smartphone and setting a reminder that way. You can put it on your calendar. You can use Post-it notes. You can tape you can tape your plan to a mirror so you see it and you remember it. All these different things are different reminders. Some people like physical reminders. Some people like electronic reminders. You know you best. So whatever works best for you is what you should use. And then finally, what happens when you run into these barriers or these problems, right? You want to activate a solution, right? To do that, you need to figure out what the issue is at first. Why aren't you getting it done? Right? What is the problem here? Did I not have enough reminders? Right? Am I just forgetting to do it? Did I schedule it for the wrong time of the day? If your morning is super chaotic, you got kids going out the door, you have mom who wants her breakfast, you have many different things happening, then maybe scheduling it to do it first thing in the morning wasn't the right time. So you brainstorm different solutions and then you try them out. And sometimes you have to go through this cycle a couple times because what you first thought was the issue may not be the issue at all. But being able to have these things on hand can be very helpful. So I just want to remind you that you have access to the website. I am going to stop this share. And I'm going to bring up the website. Okay. Hold on one second. There we go. All right, this is our Caregiver Thrive Learn Connect website. All righty. So what you can see is you have home, caregivers, participants, facilitators, and about. If you click on participants, you'll have to enter a passcode. Our passcode is CARE, C-A-R-E, all lowercase. Hit submit. And you come across a web page that is specifically for you. You have the welcome, an overview, which describes a little bit about the project itself. We have our timeline here that walks you through what to expect. We have our workshop overview, which goes over each of the different sessions and gives you kind of a highlight about what's going to happen. We have a material section, which allows you to access the different materials. Here we have videos. Eventually, there's going to be all 6 of them here so that if you miss a class, you probably access this there so you know exactly what's happening. Finally, and this is why I brought you here, is we have our resources. If you go to today's session, Filling the Well, what you will find is an optional resource page for you. You don't have to do anything on these. But if you find yourself interested in a certain aspect of what we talked about, there's more information here. And this consists of a website, articles, a book, if you're interested in. Some of them have videos like here. And it's just offering you more information that you may find helpful. So once again, it's very easy to access that. Feel free at any time to take a look. So if you go back a couple of sessions and you wanted to take a look at more about, say, stress, you can go back to that and really explore some more options on the topic. So I'd like to thank you very much for coming by and doing this makeup session with me today. If you have any questions about the material, please feel free to reach out to your facilitator. They'll give you a hand understanding any of the concepts we've discussed today. Hope you have a great day, and again, reach out to your facilitator at any time for any of the information here. Thank you and goodbye.